all doing good. I miss seeing you in person, but we're going to be doing yet another class via video. So yeah, welcome to class number 8 of 10. I just wanted to show you my new puppy. Her name's Darcy, and she's a Cocker Spaniel Poodle, and I've had her for about a week, and she's super cute. But she doesn't let me get any sleep, and she pees on the floor all the time, but we're having lots of fun, aren't we, Darcy? Yeah, so I'm going to put Darcy down, and we will start on our lesson. Now this is actually our very last unit. So we've done 5 units. We spent around 2 weeks on each unit. This unit is just for one class. So what we're going to be learning about today is portraiture. So you're going to be learning how to draw portraits properly, and you'll also be studying a little bit about the Renaissance. So Renaissance portraiture. And once we're finished that unit, there's really no more new material coming. So this is all that you're going to have to be responsible for on that final exam. So this is really, after today, there's nothing new coming in. The following class will just be reviewing for the exam. And then the last class, you'll be writing that exam. So we are getting toward the end, and you guys have been doing really good. I've always loved marking your homework because it's just been fabulous. So keep going, keep doing what you're doing, because it's been really, really great. So let's start with our image, or our history image. And what we have today is a beautiful portrait that I hope you have seen before. This is Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. And you will recognize this as one of the most iconic paintings that the world has. It's very famous, it's priceless. There's been a lot of analysis done on the Mona Lisa. And if you're interested in finding out more about why this painting is so famous, you can always read up about it a little bit. There's a lot of cool stories about the Mona Lisa. It was actually not that famous until it was stolen from the Louvre in the early 1900s. And it turned out that it was just lifted by one of the janitors. So he was Italian, and the Mona Lisa was owned by a French art gallery. So one night he just sort of took it home with him and stole it. And that's actually when the Mona Lisa became famous, was when they were hunting for the painting. So the whole world was looking for this painting suddenly that nobody really cared about before that. And then after about 2 years, the guy who stole it, he felt so bad that he just brought it back one day. So it's kind of a neat story about the Mona Lisa. But let's take down our information about that. So we have painted by Leonardo da Vinci. It's called Mona Lisa. And it was painted from 1503 to 5. So it took him a good 3 years to finish it. And some people even say that he continued working on this painting till the end of his life, that he just kept fussing with it. He was never quite happy with it. And anyway, it's an example of a Renaissance. So if you can get this down into your notes, this is very important for the final exam. And then we will talk about some of the characteristics of the Renaissance. So the Renaissance is, I'm just going to switch markers here. So characteristics of the Renaissance. Number 1, these paintings are always highly realistic. And when you look at them, you'll see that right away. This is due to the advancements in the inventions of oil paint, it was a nice smooth paint that the artists could blend, but also science, the study of anatomy was also really taking off at the time. So people were interested in getting the human anatomy correct. And we talked about that a little bit when we did our figure drawing, but even more so with portrait drawing. There were no more of these awkward medieval portraits that you can see here, where the artists just were still struggling with exactly how to draw that human face properly. In the Renaissance, all of that turns around, and the artists have figured out how to just nail those facial features and make it look very realistic. The second characteristic of Renaissance is that they're humanist. And this is a huge shift Before the Renaissance, paintings were generally about the Bible, or they were about ancient mythology, so Greek and Roman mythology. But before the Renaissance, it was a theocentric worldview, and theocentric means that God was in the center of the worldview, and everything else came out from that. Well, in the Renaissance, that becomes a humanist view. So the humanism is man is the center. So it's man-centered. And if you could just jot down this quote, this is a Renaissance quote: "Man is the measure of all things." So at this time, the church starts to lose its power, and God is sort of taken out of culture as people know it, replaced by people and people's achievements. There's a lot of reasons for that. If we had been having a class in person, I would tell you some cool stuff about that. But again, if you're interested, you can read about how humanism developed in the Renaissance and why it developed in the Renaissance. A lot of it has to do with science. In the medieval era, which was before the Renaissance, right before, the church just explained everything, and people couldn't read, and there was no science. You just believed what the Roman Catholic Church told you. So when the Reformation sort of questioned the authority of the Roman Catholic Church, people started to depend on other things. They were let down by the Roman Catholic Church, and they started to do their own research. Scientists began to study their own way instead of just doing what the church had told them all along. So all those discoveries, all those inventions, people started to feel that they were the powerful ones instead of God. So it wasn't a good thing in terms of spirituality, but it did lead to a lot of advancements in science and technology. So that's where we have the humanism. My computer is just turned off. Just gonna need a second to open that up again. All right, so characteristic number 3 is that they were often commemorative. So they were a specific, important person. And here again, before the Renaissance, people are just painting Bible stories, figures from the Bible, figures from mythology. But now, suddenly, like the neighbor lady or the guy who owns the store, or the merchant who runs the library, suddenly those people became subjects for the painting. So they would paint something to say like, hey, this is a really important person in our culture. And then the last characteristic, I'm just going to have a peek at my video here and make sure it's not cut off here. Oh no, we still have lots of room. So the fourth characteristic is that if you look closely at the details, they will indicate the wealth and the status of the person that's being pictured. So the details indicate wealth and status of the person that they're portraying. Let's just write about the person portrayed. Now, painting poor people was not a thing back then in the Renaissance. We're only painting those wealthy merchants, those important scientists, often the leaders of the church as well. So here's our 4 characteristics, and make sure you press pause and just copy that down in your notes, because you will be responsible for all of this on your final exam and also that. So take a minute to take care of that. Then we're going to move on to the studio component of the class, in which I will be walking you through all the steps for drawing a portrait. Maybe you could turn actually right now to your homework log, and I'll talk about this at the end as well. But your homework log for this month or this 2-week period says that you have to do a report on any Renaissance portrait. But if you could just grab your pencil and scratch that right off. We're not going to do that last report. You're just going to treat yourself to a no report month or class. And then I am going to be expecting a little more work put into the 3 portraits that you're going to be doing instead. So make sure you've put a line through that report on any Renaissance portrait. We're not going to be doing that. And we'll talk about that again at the very end. So let's move on to our drawing, our studio time. You're going to need to print off the package that was emailed to your parents so that you've got some reference. If you can't print it off, actually it's fine if you work from a screen as well. Just make sure that you can really see the screen well in front of you. You'll need paper and a couple of pencils. The first thing that we have to tackle with portraiture is the proportions. And just like we did all those gestures when we learned how to draw people, the gesture is more important than the details. It's really important that you, with portraits, that you get the proportions correct before you start putting details on top. So this worksheet package, which you should have in front of you, is just going to walk you step by step through all the stuff that you're going to be responsible for. It's divided into proportions, then we have features, then we have hair, how to make hair, and then lastly, we're going to try a few real portraits of a couple people that you might know, maybe not. And then lastly, the assignment. So let's start with our proportions. There's a lot of different ways that artists will teach you how to draw people. This way is slightly different from the way that I usually teach it, but I'm gonna probably skip this step here. But just follow along. You can do this step, but draw along with me and we'll just go from here and then on to the end. So it starts with a nice light and easy circle. And you'll notice this is so light you can probably hardly see it. And that's when you know you're drawing correctly. If you are drawing your circle like this, curving it in, you need to just stop and try again. It's got to be light. Okay, so none of this. After the circle is finished, we're just going to kind of bring it down into a couple of angles. So this is sort of your chin shape. So to exaggerate the angles, it heads in and then it turns the corner, and then before they meet it flattens out for a chin. So that's our flat chin. So now I can darken this a bit, and this is the easiest way to get a proper head shape. Okay, so right now we're here on our drawing. I haven't done these thirds. Okay, so once your head shape, you've got that circle, you've got that nice jaw. Just double check that these angles are all correct. The chin should stay pretty flat. See how it's straight? So just keep it flat, angle, angle, and then up. So once that's done, you can actually find where halfway is. So I can see that halfway is just right there. And that's your first really important measurement because your eyes are actually halfway down your head. So let's stop for a minute and have a look at somebody that's in the room with you and ask yourself, where are their eyes? They're not up here, which is where we like to draw them, right? Draw a happy face and people put the eyeballs way up there. Well, that's like seeing eyes up here. Those eyes are halfway down the face. Super important that you draw a line here. Okay, so once that line is there, we can do another dividing line for half. Just so that everything stays symmetrical. Without this line, you end up with your eyes wandering and stuff. So it's just nice to have that divided like that. Okay, so when that's finished, we're going to mark off halfway again, which is right here. And it should be like the bottom of the original circle that you drew first. So this is where the bottom of the nose is going to end up. This is where the eyes are going to be. Bottom. And then the mouth ends up, if you were to divide the remaining space, it ends up in there somewhere. So we have to do that first before you start putting features on. Once you've done that, then you can start sticking on the features. All right, so a couple things about eyes. They say that eyes have in between them the equal width of the width of an eye. So in order to not make them too close or too far apart, if you can fit another eye right in there, same size, then you know that you've left the right amount of space. So eyes tend to be curvier on the top and flatter on the bottom. To exaggerate that for you, it's curved at the top, flat on the bottom, kind of like a Dora the Explorer eye. Dora doesn't look very realistic, but they did do that correct when they made her eyes. Okay, so inside the eye we've got an iris, and we'll just indicate that a little bit here, even though they've done that on this step, but that's okay. All right, so the nose, keep it just a little. I've got that line here, but I often find once I get to the nose and look at it, I feel like this nose is just a little bit higher, and that all depends on the person's face. Some people have longer noses than others, and you just have to kind of look carefully and ask yourself where that person's nose is. Okay, so then that would also mean that the mouth would come up a little bit. Okay, so when you're doing a mouth, the mouth is only as wide as where the pupils would be. So that's why I kind of like to draw the iris in first, because if you put your pupil in, that's usually how wide the mouth should be. So be careful you're not making your mouth really huge, really wide. That can get really scary looking very quickly. So now that everything's in the right spot, we can indicate where the ears go. Slightly higher than the nose, and then they kind of disappear. Now we can start filling in more details of the features. So I'm going to let you stop there and just continue these drawings until it looks a little bit like this, and then I'll meet you back for some work on the features. So our next job is going to be to really study how the features look with the shades. Now remember your value scale. A lot of this depends on shading. So I always like to tell students, you don't have lines down the side of your nose. You know when you're little and you're drawing with the eyes at the top and then you go like that? There's no lines on the side of your nose. But the reason we think there is because there are shadows that go down there. So on this page, what you're going to need to do is work through the 6 steps of drawing a mouth and everything properly shaded. Then you're going to work through the 6 steps of drawing a nose. Sorry, there's 9 steps for drawing the nose. And just notice how much it depends on shading, not lines. So you're going to have to do all that fuzzy shading. I would suggest grabbing a nice smudge stick if you have one of those cool smudge sticks that we used a couple weeks back. If not, you can use your fingers a little bit to smudge. And then finally, I need you to try an eye study. So this one is not divided into steps. This one, you walk through the steps. This one as well. But for the eye, just give it your best shot. Just draw the eye as best as you can. And you're going to want to spend quite a bit of time getting all that shading in there. Think about your value scale. Think about the 10s and don't skip shades. You want to do all those shades. You can make a really beautiful looking eye if you really slow down and take your time. These are very important because you're going to have to hand in 3 portraits at the end, and if you've practiced the features on this sheet, then that's really going to help you when you go to submit your final drawings. So a word about hair. What we have to do is say no to string hair. String hair is horrible. Here's what it looks like. We've drawn our face and we put all these strings all over it. Hair does not do that. It should not do that. And you'll notice on the worksheet that hair is actually a shape. So when we have a portrait, what you want to do is find the shape of the hair. See how this is a shape. It's not a whole bunch of strings. Okay, so everybody's hair has a shape. So have a look in the mirror, see if you can find the shape of your hair. Even this is a shape, right? So I like to imagine that if it was a Lego figure, you know how you can take the hair right off the Lego? It becomes a shape and a form, and you can take it off and stick it back on. When you finish the shape, that's when you can come along and add a few little details, like a few strings but only after you've got the shape correct. Okay, so I want you to try a bunch of these hair studies. There's 8 there, and you can maybe try all of them. They're all girls. If you want to do boy hair, that's fine too, but I would just suggest working through these and trying to get used to the idea that hair is a shape. So now we're ready to put it all together. You know how to do proportions. You know how to do mouths, noses, eyes, and hair. And that means you're ready to try a couple. So these are not your homework, but they are really important to do because you're going to make your mistakes on here. And then when you do your homework, a lot of those errors will have been worked out. So your next job is to either do Tom Holland or Jack Sparrow. Now did I say and? Yeah, so pick your favorite, do that first, and then when you're done, do the next one. So we want to see both of these. This one might be a bit trickier because it's a photo and you're translating photo to drawing. This one's already a drawing, so it might be a little bit easier for you. But you're going to try both of these. And finally, your assignment. So now you're ready to do this. You're going to draw 3 properly, fully shaded, in proportion portraits. So 3 of them. You can do yourself, you can do a sibling, you could do your mom, your dad. You could also go online and find a celebrity portrait, whatever you like, but there's got to be 3 of them. And your homework log here says that they have to be mounted. You're not handing these in to me. You're just going to be taking pictures of them, so you do not have to mount them. That's just a little modification we're making for COVID. No mounting. And again, just on that note, remember we crossed this out. You don't have to do this. But that means that you have to spend extra time on these portraits. These are fun to do, but it's really important that you spend like at least an hour on each one. You cannot do one of these in less than an hour's time. So let's have the look at the rubric. So you're getting marked out of 4. So either 1, 2, 3, or 4 for proportions. For accuracy, so does it look like a person, not a potato? Level of detail, like did you skip all these beautiful details or did you actually draw them? Full range of shading, and then just how beautiful craftsmanship and effort is just the how beautiful it looks at the end. So just to compare successful ones versus not as successful ones, this is the level that you are aiming for. Now, if you're looking at this and thinking, wow, there's no way in the world I can draw that well, this is a student drawing, right? So this is a professional drawing, but do you notice in both of them, all the detail is there, all the shading is there. They haven't skipped stuff. They haven't thought, oh, that's too much hair, I don't feel like drawing it, so I'm going to leave it off. They've dealt with everything. They've done all the shading. So even if it doesn't look professional, we're still aiming for this level of detail and shading. If you hand things in that look like this, they're just not going to be considered complete. You'll be getting 2s, maybe 2.5s for these. So you're going to see right away all that shading is missing. Like they've done a little bit, barely, but there's no 10s, 9s, 8s. They've skipped all those beautiful details. So you got to slow it right down, at least an hour, probably more, for all 3. Okay, so again, you're choosing your own, your choice. You don't have to do these people. You're gonna submit your own 3. And I think that is it. So we're going to be meeting again at 4:30 on Tuesday to chat about this stuff and make sure you don't have any questions. And then the following class is going to be a review class. So again, this is the last thing that you're handing in. All that work, all your work is going to be finished after this last assignment. But you will have to spend a couple weeks studying for your exam. But I'm going to get you all ready for that exam. There's nothing to worry about. You're going to have to put the time in studying, but you'll be very clear on exactly what's going to be on the exam. So there'll be nothing to worry about there. So I'll see you guys all at 4:30.